Thank you very, very much, Suzanne. It's great to be here. I appreciate Max Bax for doing this, and to all of you for coming out on a rainy night in Cleveland. I do in the book talk about rights that we used to have and don't have anymore, or think we have and don't have anymore, but I also talk about rights that we could imagine having that we don't even dare think about, and I talk about rights that other nations have developed. So in Ecuador's constitution now, the environment has rights. Not that people have rights to a clean environment, the environment itself has rights, which, oh no, how crazy, rights are for human beings, right? But we give rights to corporations. And tomorrow, the Supreme Court may be ruling that not only are corporations people and humans with human rights, and not only is money speech, but there can no longer be any more limits on the use of money as speech, depriving those corporations of their sacred human rights, which would be a step in the opposite direction of what I advocate in this book on that topic and many other topics. So I'll talk for a little bit here and take any questions and discussions that you have and try to answer anything the best I can, and I'll be happy to sign copies of this, and the store's got them, and I've got some extras if we run out, and I also have a few copies of a book by a friend of mine named Ann Wright called Dissent that I'd be glad to provide you with. The store may have them here as well. A lot of what Daybreak deals with is the incredible acceleration in transfer of power to the White House over the past 8 years, from the Congress primarily, but from the courts and from the people, which was not new, but was radically accelerated. So the power to make laws, the power to make laws through executive orders and through signing statements and through secret memos, which will be cemented in place by this prosecution proposed by Eric Holder if it extends no further than proposed. The power to make war, the power to spend money, the power to make treaties, to make appointments, all of the powers that are shared between the branches or that belong in the Congress that takes up the first 60% of the Constitution and is given almost every power and is now thought of as the second branch of government. These have all moved to the White House. And you know, you can think this is better or worse depending on who is in the White House at any given moment. But I argue for moving that power back to the Congress, and for cleaning up the Congress so that it actually represents us, and for not only improving our laws but enforcing them. I think we need all three of those steps simultaneously if we're going to get anywhere. And the reason I think you have to move the powers back to the Congress is that I don't think that elections are very important. I think what you do in between them is incredibly important. And I don't think that you can do anything in between elections to make a president listen to you. It's very, very difficult. Here's someone who's not up for election for 4 years. Here's someone who can ignore entire states, whole regions of the country, and still be elected 4 years from now. Here's someone who's taken over 10 times the money from any given industry as any senators or Congress members. Here's someone who has the corporate media focused on him like a laser and all the damage that does. Here's someone who is the leader of a party and all of those partisan responsibilities. And you look at Congress where you don't have to get the entire country to lobby someone. You only have to get 700,000 people or some section thereof. And that's a huge amount. It's a huge amount. The House of Representatives has not been enlarged in a long, long time. It's absolutely insane to imagine that anyone can represent 700,000 people. We need smaller districts. We need we need sensible districts that aren't drawn by bipartisan means. And we need to enlarge the House, and I think we could do that without drastically enlarging Capitol Hill if we got rid of the Senate. And I go into why I think we should get rid of the Senate. But I think this idea that we have that, you know, well, my congressman's lousy, which you may not hear here if your representative is Congressman Dennis Kucinich, but in much of the country you hear, my congressman's lousy, but now we've got Barack Obama and I can lobby him. I think strategically is very, very misguided. I think it's remarkable. How many of you are in Congressman Kucinich's district? About half. I worked for him on his 2004 campaign as his press person, and it was a wonderful experience, and I've kept in touch with him ever since. And I'd be curious when we get to a discussion if any of you could inform me at all what, if anything, the people of his district do that is so drastically different from what the people of the rest of the country do, or if most of the credit goes simply to him for resisting the forces of corruption that so many other Congress members fall to. But I think the example of someone like him, who, if the others all voted like him, we would not have these wars, we would have single-payer health coverage, we would have economic justice, is an incredible example. And we need to figure out how to find 200 more of that. So I enjoyed working with him and came to Cleveland in 2004, and I've enjoyed ever since then working with Progressive Democrats of America, which is a group that was formed largely out of that campaign. People who were energized and inspired and didn't want to quit just because we lost, formed an activist group that has, along with Democrats.com, which I also work for, and it's odd that these are the groups with the word Democrats in the name, but these are groups that, along with others I could list, do a better job than most, and I could list those as well, at being independent, at asking citizens what they want of Washington and taking that demand to Washington, as opposed to what has become the norm now on both sides of the political spectrum, and that is asking our representatives in Washington what we should demand of them, going out and organizing people to rally for those demands that have been pre-approved, which sort of makes us props rather than citizens. It reverses democracy. I think PDA has done an incredible job of independently taking citizens' views to Washington regardless of the party line, and at the same time working more closely with the better members of Congress than most groups. I've been doing these talks about the book for a few days now, and people have applauded and said thank you and bought the book, but then I've been told, God, that was depressing. Can't you give people any hope? You know? And excuse me, ultimately, I think we worry way too much about whether we're hopeful or despairing. I think, I love the saying, let's save our pessimism for better times. I think when things are bad, that's when you have to work hardest. I honestly don't want to step aside and be a spectator and predict whether we're going to succeed or not. I think it's an insidious role that strips away important parts of our activism. So I actually don't much care whether there are good reasons to hope or not. But I think that there are more reasons to hope, and I try to express that to people who need them now than there were 7-8 months ago when everybody was so hopeful. I think the fact that people are beginning to be disappointed and upset and engaged and active, as they should have been last November, is a good thing. Not because there's something wrong with the Congress and the president we elected, and I knew they were bad and you thought they were good, but because it's absolutely the role, the decent, respectful role of citizens in a representative republic from day one to tell them how you want to be represented. As the president goes out and quotes Franklin Roosevelt himself demanding of us. And the idea of stepping aside and waiting and see what they do, as if that's more respectful, that's appropriate following a coup, not an election. We have elections. So, as I said, I expect very little of elections, and when you expect, especially when they are as corrupted as ours are, by the voting system, by the money, by the media, by the parties, so that the choices are so limited. If you expect huge things from elections, you are going to be extremely excited and then extremely depressed, and extremely excited and extremely depressed every couple of years, 4 years, and until eventually some people are going to notice, But I think elections are absolutely essential. We couldn't do without them, and we need to clean them up so that they actually work. But they are minimal. They are the barest beginnings of our responsibility as citizens. And I expect very little of presidents. And I want to expect very little of presidents. I want the power to transform the country on Capitol Hill, not in the White House. I wouldn't want it there. And people who made these demands and these expectations of our new president and then are disappointed when he doesn't deliver them or doesn't even try to deliver them are in many cases expecting a president to make laws. And I don't want presidents to make laws. Mm-hmm. And I don't want Congress to ask the president how they should make laws. I want Congress to ask us and then tell the president. And you have progressive Democrats on Capitol Hill now whining and moaning that the president won't write their bills for them or order them to do better on health care, for example. They honestly can't conceive of the idea of passing the best bill they can, putting it on his desk, and demanding that he sign it or veto it. Because their loyalties now are not to branches of government, they are to parties. And that is incredibly destructive. I also, in the particular case of Barack Obama, expected significantly less than most people. Primarily because when I watched him campaigning and what he said and what he wrote and what his staff said and what he did, I mostly watched what he said and what he did, not what I fantasized he might be secretly thinking that was better than what he was actually doing, as I think most people did. We have seen over the past recent months this debate about health care and can we pass health care reform. And we have this fantasy going on about the noble superhero in the White House who's lone guy, and we know the name of his dog and his daughters, and in Congress, which has the indecency to be too numerous for us to know the names of all their dogs and their daughters, and he's going up against them, and they're corrupted by money, and he wants to give us health care, and they want to stop it. And Max Baucus, he's the roadblock because he took $2 million from the unhealth industry, right? Who took $18 million?
Barack Obama.
Right. So when the Senate laid out its plans, it did so in consultation with Barack Obama. When the progressives in the House, instead of demanding single payer and then compromising from there, self-censored and opened the debate demanding the public option with nowhere left to compromise, as they are now running up against, that was in consultation with Barack Obama. When George Miller, who last Congress supported John Conyers' bill for single payer, tried to block Congressman Kucinich's amendment to just allow states to do it, he had been told to do that by Barack Obama. So if you pay attention to what's going on behind the scenes, and it's not very well kept secret, the White House has been running the show, and that hasn't been helping, and it shouldn't be. No matter what the White House's view is, it shouldn't be. So if the president gives a good speech to Congress tomorrow and encourages them to do a good job and asks them to pass a good bill, great. But it's up to Congress. And if he encourages them to pass a lousy bill, they should pay absolutely no attention. I think we get discouraged very easily. I think it takes us a matter of months, sometimes a couple years, to get discouraged. And I think the significant changes we've seen in this country and around the world to better the cause of justice and peace have taken far longer and have always run up against the same hurdles and roadblocks. And I think if we ever, in the coming months and years, really begin to take hold of Washington and get our government to listen to us at all, we are going to see a serious backlash, more than we've seen. We're going to see a crackdown on the right to assemble. We're going to see police abuse, spying, intimidation. And we have to take those things as compliments. We have to take those things as recognition that we're getting close to succeeding. Because you never succeed without that happening first. So we don't need to get discouraged over that. And I think we should realize what we have done and where we have come. And the fact that we've turned this country against wars. We haven't stopped the country's wars, but we've turned the people of this country against wars, including in Afghanistan. We've prevented these wars from being any larger than they are. We've slowed recruitment. We've prevented an attack on Iran, specifically by exposing the lies about Iraq. We've saved Social Security thus far. We've thrown Alberto Gonzalez out on his ear. We've prevented the president pardoning people the way the sidekick big guy wanted. We have the Congressional Progressive Caucus now, for the first time in world history, taking a firm stand on something. Never mind how weak you think the healthcare position is that they're taking a firm stand on, or even how clear it is. It is arguably a firm stand, and they are expressing a willingness to kill a bill if it's not good enough. That's remarkable. That will be very, very helpful, unless they cave in the coming months, which will be absolutely disastrous. So we have improved our position in the polls, in public opinion. We are building our own media. We're learning to use our own media and communicating. We have progressive websites and radio shows now that we reach as many people as the corporate media, and we need to keep building that. We have court decisions now going our way. Judges are changing with the political tide. We have rulings now that John Yoo and John Ashcroft can be sued for what they did. They are not immune. And we have people learning to turn against AstroTurf organizing and engage in real independent organizing. And we have people, including the labor movement, which is getting a more aggressive leader very soon, becoming aware that they're playing games with us. And that if they chose, 51 senators could end the filibuster tomorrow. They could pass the Employee Free Choice Act the next day. They could build a labor movement. They could give us single-payer health care. And if they don't do it, they are going to, politically, they're going to throw the country to the Republicans in the worst possible way. But if we get energized, as we're just starting to now, predictably 6 to 8 months late, we could do these things. We could get rid of the filibuster. We could pass a progressive agenda, and we could move this country in an incredibly different direction. 10 years ago, nobody could have possibly imagined that we would have former presidents and vice presidents going on television confessing to torture and bragging about it. What this country looks like 10 years from now is up to anybody's imagination, and it could be drastically improved as easily as continuing in this downward slide. So I appreciate you coming out and for everything you're doing to try to improve Ohio and America, and I'll take any questions you've got.